Okay, welcome, Dave. Thank you very
Right.
much for joining. So I've got the pleasure of interviewing Dave Law today, who's a friend of mine who I've known from university, which is over nearly 20 years, kind of giving our age away now. So I was in the year below Dave with his wife. Dave's the year above. We've known each other now for a while. Close family friends to the stage where my wife's virtual birthday party last week, Dave and family were dancing quite hard to to help the celebrations. We also share a mutual love for rum, so whenever we're having a glass of rum, we always kind of remind us of each other. So, Dave, I've got you on here as you're a teacher in the UK, and as in the UK, same as here in the US, you guys are having to care for the essential workers who have to go in. So I just thought I'd bring you on here to share that, how are you coping from a mental fitness part of view with that demand.
Yeah.
First question I'm going to start is if you could just tell me how you're coping from a mental fitness point of view in the kind of different roles that you play as a dad, a husband, a son, and also as a teacher.
Mhm. In terms of, I suppose, mental attitude, I've always been sort of glass half full rather than glass half empty. I've delivered assemblies to students just in terms of your positive attitude and trying to avoid things turning into sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. I think it's certainly with things as they are at the moment, it would be very, very easy to go down the sort of all this doom and gloom. I've got a bit of a sort of, I suppose, mantra of I certainly haven't got it as bad as lots of other people, and you need to have a certain level of perspective. I think it's interesting with COVID-19 at the moment that it's obviously affecting a massive number of people. However, I would suspect that quite a few people in some of the African countries would probably argue that Ebola and lots of other viruses and lots of other diseases have been affecting them in a big way. But I think it's the fact that it's sort of hitting more developed countries that it sort of seems to be a lot bigger in the press, bigger in the news, etc., etc. I think there's certainly, in terms of, I suppose, your self-preservation and defending yourself a little bit, making sure that you've got the ability to dip into and dip out of media and picking the right types of media and knowing the times of the day best to do that. So I choose when I go and access news. There's only certain outlets of news that I will choose to dip into. And I certainly don't do that later than 7 o'clock in the evening, because I find it then easier to shut down on an evening. I don't want that to, in my sort of downtime, I don't want to be thinking about that type of thing. I know that my wife finds it a lot harder to do that, and sometimes sort of you have to confiscate the mobile phone and the ability to access the internet, which is great as it is. Does offer up a whole load of sort of, I suppose, doom and gloom stories. And do I really want to hear about however many hundreds of deaths in Italy and looking at the football stadiums that have been shut down and used as mortuaries and that sort of thing? And it's, I suppose, from a dad point of view, drip feeding information needs to be age appropriate information. My two girls, who are 13 and 8, they don't need to know everything. They do need to know some things. That's my sort of role as a father, to make sure that they have the right type of information and at the times that they need it as well. I suppose sometimes there might be occasions where I think it's appropriate to give them information and they might not want that information. So I need to be very much aware of that. If they do want information, if I don't want to give it at that particular time, I need to be sensitive to that as well. And although it might not be the ideal time for me, if they've asked for it, to provide them with that information. In terms of, I suppose, dealing with different generations as well. My parents and sort of like elderly relatives that we've got local, very, very different mindsets to us. When you're being told what is essential foods and essential supplies, I've still got them contacting, just sort of saying, are you able to go to the local shop to get my lottery ticket? And are you able to go and get my Madeira cake? And it's like, you need to readdress what you're thinking of as essential.
Yeah.
And being able to at least sort of have those conversations. I mean, I popped over to my mum and dad's 2 days ago, and my dad was concerned that his beer supply was now only 5 bottles, and would I be able to pop back down to the shop to get some? And it's like, no, I'm not going to do that for you, Dad. That's not essential. I've just brought you 4 bags of shopping round with the essentials. That is not essential. I think with regards to, I suppose, going into schools and being a teacher for 20 odd years, I think there's always been a level of, I suppose, empathy, and you're recognising there's it's a big melting pot in a school, and you've got lots of students from all sorts of socio-economic backgrounds, all sorts of, I suppose, different mental health points of view as well, and where they are emotionally and their level of emotional intelligence. So when you're going into school, it's you as I suppose a teacher have to demonstrate a certain level of, I suppose, stability as much as anything. And whilst there might be things that are concerning me in the current environment, if I go into school sort of, screaming, panicking, sticking my hand sanitizer on every 5 minutes, the students will feed back on that. They will mirror that effect. If you go in with a sort of a calm persona and, I'm aware of what the things that we need to put in place to keep ourselves safe. This is what we need to be doing. And it's very matter of fact. And I suppose with my scientific background as well, I've got a level of understanding of, I suppose, spread of infection, transmission, that sort of thing. So it's, it's not things that I haven't done before in a science lab when at university and sort of working in the science labs that we've got at school. It just needs to be more consistently practiced by general public and also the students in school, so that we can all kind of remain safe, if you like.
Okay, I love that answer. So quite a bit to pick through there. So I like the fact that you said the glass half full. So the kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of kind of protecting the mindset in what you let in. The social media thing that you talked about, that's come up on a few talks now. I have to do the same thing as confiscating my wife's mobile phone, because it doesn't matter if I don't watch the news, somehow I still hear about it. First thing in the morning, I'm getting Facebook and Twitter feeds. So I think that's also a big one, protecting the mindset. But I love what you said about the kids part, of how you really like drip feeding the information, but really being sensitive to their needs of, if they want to hear, if they need some information now, and whether you feel you're not ready to give it or not, you kind of need to assume what they need.
I think I suppose there's got to be a recognition that everyone is an individual, and people's mental health and mental fitness, as you described it, will be at all sorts of different points, and I can't assume that everyone is at the same point as me. I suppose what sort of trained that in me, if you like, is that you go into a classroom environment on a daily basis and you can be surrounded by the same 30 students, but the same 30 students, 4 of them could have had something happen at home. Another 6 could have had something happen at break time or lunchtime. So the dynamic is constantly changing. So you're having to, if you like, pick up on other people's emotions, the fragility that might be there, I suppose, the increased stability that might be there for some of them. And at these particular times, I think from a student point of view, I mean, it was interesting talking to my wife Jen before coming on to, she was just sort of saying, when schools were closed, and we were told that we were supposed to be going back in, she sort of said, I had a conversation with you, and it wasn't until she pointed it out, my mindset was along the, we'll need to make sure that this is in place for the kids, and this is in place for the kids and their safety. And it was only after about 15 minutes in that conversation, she said, well, have you thought about yours? It's like, no, not particularly, because you're used to going in, and part of the role is you're there to care for the student well-being when they enter that school environment. So that's helped a little bit. I think in current times as they are at the moment, you've got to bear in mind as well, it's similar to the last week of any school term. In some schools, not in the one that I'm particularly at the moment, because behaviour is very good, but you tend to find a bit of a drop-off in behaviour. Some people wonder why that is. The reason that is for, the vast majority of the kids that are misbehaving is because they know that they're coming up to a point of time where the stability of school and the structure and the organised routines, they're about to literally go out of the window for a week half term, 2 weeks at Easter, 2 or 6 weeks over the summer. Yeah. And I think now you've got to bear in mind, as I suppose, as a family, if you're a family member now, that stability that goes from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock at the end of the day, that has just disappeared, and there isn't necessarily any light at the end of the tunnel. If you're in an unstable home background, as bad as it might be for some kids and parents who are having to look after those kids, I think you've always got the fact that it's there's only 3 days left before they go back to school, or there's only a week left before they go back to school. Now where we're at the moment is like I don't know how long it's likely to be, and that level of uncertainty is massively unsettling for people, especially if you're trying to do your current job role, career, whatever it is at home, and whilst doing that, trying to look out for your kids and educate them to a degree at home, or your best abilities at home. And it's a situation that most people aren't used to.
I mean, so this leads me to my next question, because I'm on a lot of WhatsApp chats, and I can tell you a load of parents are losing it, because they're just not used to this new, having the kids there 24/7 and having to work. And the last example I had was basically this woman I know very well had to have a conference call at work. Her husband had to have a conference call at the same time. And then it just escalated into a big fight about who's going to take care of the kids. And
my first question would be to that is, unless they are essential that those conference calls go on at the same time, if you've got the ability to schedule them, why would you schedule both at the same time?
Yeah, and I think people are now having to realize that the working from home at the moment is not like before. And as you said, is it really essential? Because trying to just cope with this new situation is probably the highest, making sure that your family is secure and safe is the highest priority. But the question I kind of wanted to ask you, because I love the answer you gave, and for a lot of kids now, they're really in dreamland, because for a lot of kids, they have both parents at home for the first time. A lot of dads who are always traveling and away with work. The kids are probably beside themselves having seen dad for probably the first time for having him 2 months in a period. So I kind of wanted to get some tips from you for other parents out there. What kind of structure can they put in place, or creating a protective environment so that the kids have that stability and really enjoy this period and are not overwhelmed with the stress and panic?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you sort of saying about the kids are in kind of dreamland. When students at school were I think they got wind of the fact that if you were sort of demonstrating any of those symptoms, there's a few that were crying wolf and going around and coughing and spluttering, and as soon as they then got sent home, and the realisation that their parents were going to have to look after them for at least a 14-day period, and then they're then calling back up and sort of saying, "Oh no, I was only messing around," and the school weren't accepting them back in. It was like the realisation then dawns. I think, potentially it's an exciting time, and to be able to re-establish contact with your family members. However, it must be quite daunting if you haven't actually got those established relationships with your own kids, with your own family members. We're in a fortunate position that as a teacher, I've got 13 weeks of holiday a year where I do get to spend a lot of time with my own kids. We've worked very, very hard on establishing routines in the home, So, for example, sitting around and we all eat together, we dine together around the table. So a lot of the routines are already in place for us. I suppose the sort of advice, in terms of with our own 2 kids at home, one primary school, one secondary, their needs will be very, very different. The oldest who's in secondary is very self-focused, independent learner. And would be easy just to sort of, she's happy to do a colour-coded timetable and go off and do her own thing and stick to it and crack on with her own work. Easy to ignore her. Just because she gets on with her own sort of thing doesn't mean that we should ignore her. So we sort of drop in, touch base with her on a regular basis, make sure that she's happy with what she can do. And although I'm only a mere scientist, I can sort of do some of the math stuff with her if she needs to, and some of the other subjects, and Jen can as a historian as well. So I think it's with if you've got older students, it's just about making sure that the kind of routines and the structure that's in place in schools, you can adapt that to the home. So we spoke to Emma, our oldest, in a fair amount of detail, and just sort of said, this is what we would suggest. Do you think this will work for you? Do you want to create your own structure and your own timetable and organise your working week as you would want to, and then come back to us? We'll sit down, we'll have a conversation. We'll see if that works for us, because if there is going to be elements of during the sort of course of a day where you're going to want access to either me or your mum, then we need to be aware of that so we can sort of plan into our days when we're going to dip in and out of our work. So I suppose it's having the open lines of communication allows you to do that. With the youngest, who's going to require more one-to-one attention, I mean, we've got at the moment, I'm just glancing over the top of the computer screen actually, we've got on a whiteboard there the sort of negotiated structure to the day. So I'm looking over, we've got kind of work starts at 10. Now what that actually means for Jessica, the youngest, who's the primary school, is that she can kind of slower start to the day, if you like, or our now new school day. That allows me and Jen, if I'm up early, because I'm up with the dog probably about 6, so if there's any work that I need to do, which, I am still planning lessons at home, I am still doing schemes of work, I can do those before really Jess gets up. So that when she's ready to start work at 10, I can then drop out of work, which means that Jen's got 2 hours worth of, she can crack on with her work undisturbed as best as possible. Although we have had, she's had a few sort of calls like this, if you like, with Jess sat on her lap, and I think that becomes the new norm, is that if you've got kids and you're working from home, they might well be in some of those meetings that you're having. We've also, we've got it sort of planned out that I do some of the maths with her. Jen tends to then have a break and do, I'm looking again over the top of it, 11 to 12 o'clock creative time. So we've got like a bank, if you like, of creative activities that she could have available to her as a break from the academic stuff that we've been doing. Then we all break for lunch, so we've got a sort of all the family members come together. There's no work taking place. We all sit down, touch base. How's your morning work been? Hopefully Jessica's not bored to tears of doing maths with me. And then there's free time then after lunch for both the girls to do whatever they want, play with each other, play separately. It's an opportunity for them, me and Jen, to carry on with our work. And then we've got afternoon activities, which then run up until probably about 3, half 3, something like that, where depending on our work days, if you like, and who's got more flexibility, one of us will drop out and do some more academic studies, English, geography, whatever, history with Jess, so that again it frees up the other parent so that they're not being hassled. So we've got sort of chunks of time during the day. That runs from sort of Monday to Thursday, and then we've got a goof off Friday. So there is no work that takes place on Friday, and we'll do some sort of family-based activities, and then that leads into the weekend. So there's structure It is fluid. So there will be times when I'm working with Jess and she clearly doesn't want to do the maths. And if you're looking for the feedback, if you're looking for the signs that a student is just switched off to it, that they are shut down, that their mental approach to it, as soon as Jess starts sort of saying, I can't do this, I have conversations with her about, yeah, absolutely, you won't be able to do this. And the reason that you won't be able to do it is because you're telling yourself that you can't do it. And then I have to sort of say, well, we did 4 times tables yesterday. You said you couldn't do that yesterday. And then by the end of the session, you could do your 4 times tables. So you can do it. Oh, yeah, okay. And then once she's back online with the positivity, you're then opening the door again, and then you can have you've got your pathway into learning, if you like. I think you've got to have recognition as well about concentration and time span for that. I mean, as an 8-year-old, she's got probably an 8-minute, 10-minute concentration span. So we've got planned an hour's worth of academic studies, but as soon as we've done some sort of bought these sort of maths books that she does, which are kind of 10-minute activities. So do a 10-minute activity. I will be the one that gets up from the table. I'll walk away. I'll go over into the garden. She can come with me if I want to. Bit of fresh air out there. We have a designated 3-4 minute break, and then we go back and do another 10-minute activity. If you're planning on sort of doing like a whole hour, you're setting yourself up to fail, because no kid's going to have that concentration. And neither is you. And I think that, the biggest thing in terms of having patience is, if she doesn't get things, I'm always asking myself as a sort of teaching practitioner, is she not getting it because she's not focusing, or am I making a bad job of explaining it? Am I making a bad job of teaching it? Have I not given her the sort of the tools that she needs to be able to access that particular type of learning? Have I not allowed her to get into the right mindset and switch completely if it doesn't seem to be working, rather than me getting more frustrated? It's like, this is the maths hour. We will be doing maths now. Now I'm getting annoyed at you. Now you're crying at me, and this isn't working. Because as soon as I do that, is she going to be inspired? Is she going to be motivated to come back to that next lesson with me? Nah, it's never going to happen. So I suppose it's being a bit goofy, trying to have a bit of a sense of humour, making sure that it's as enjoyable as possible, which, I've got a few years of experience doing that, and you've got to constantly look for that feedback from your son, daughter, student, whoever it is, and pick up on the signs of, is it going in? And just because you think it's going in doesn't necessarily mean it is. So you need to be sort of checking in, and we've got little whiteboards, or you could use bits of rough paper. What you've been doing for the last 10 minutes, can you get them to now check it? And do they actually understand it? And if they don't, then you've made a bad job of teaching it.
Okay. All right. So I love that answer. I think a lot of people wish that they had you and Jenny in their house to help put in the structure. But what I love was what you said at the beginning, actually getting them to input into, doing the schedule out. I love the fact listening for the cues, the feedback, and also really being fluid. For me, that was the biggest thing I heard of Jenny having to do the conference call and just having Jess on her lap, because we're in a crazy new situation. So trying to do things the way it was before is you're just probably setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, and I think in terms of a sort of a partnership as a parenting team, if you like, what our relationship is like at home, and the lines of communication are open, and we do have that dialogue. I might not necessarily want to hear it all the time, but the reality of the home situation at the moment is, with me out of school, I can do my work as and when I want to, whereas Jen's work is live. So as things come into her, she has to adapt to those and evolve with those and action those. And that is, it's time dependent. My work is not. So I sort of have to flex probably more than she does. and I can dip in and out of it, and can always do it at the end of the working day or the start abilities so that she can do it. And it works for the most part. There have been occasions where one of my sort of areas for learning, if you like, is I know I can be blinkered in the work that I do. So, you know, we've both been sat at the dining table where I'm talking to you from now, both working, and I will be focused on something. And one of the kids will come in, and their default setting is they will usually go to mom, and they're hassling her when she's doing stuff that is time dependent, and there's other people kind of on that conference call, and it's like for me to get my head up and take the blinkers off, so to speak. It's like, right, okay, I need to step away now, because my work I can put down, whereas her she can't. So I think from a, you know, if you've got two parents at home working, it's about the negotiation, if you like, and making sure that I suppose you've both got time to do the work, so that you're not feeling that one person has got more of the share of dealing with the kids, and it is an equal partnership. And that might be that during the course of that working day, you know, I might do the vast majority of the stuff with the kids, but when Jen comes sort of offline with her work commitments, that she's, I don't know, cooking the meal or putting the girls to bed, so that daily balance is still there.
Yeah. I mean, just listening to you, I think that's a lesson that even where I'm going to take on board, because just learning to communicate and plan and structure today, to think who has the time, the more time sensitive challenges, and don't kind of think it has to be 50-50. Like some bits, sometimes someone can do more, other times the other person can do more. But we really planning the day so that, I think you said you get up at 6, you can take the dog out and get some work started, so that by the time it's 10, when Jen needs to go on, you can then start taking the kids. So,
yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's a kind of, it's not dissimilar probably to where you are at the moment with anyone with young children and babies, because you don't ever want to get to that point in terms of looking after your own kids where you start doing the point scoring, tallying. Yeah. I've done this, and you know, we've probably both been in the explosive types of conversations where the point scoring and I've done more than you and you're slacking off. Yeah. It's destructive. It has no place in terms of moving anything forward positively. And it's just like, yeah, just get that out of your head straight. You can think it, just don't say it.
No, I totally agree with you. It gets you nowhere. And I like your, as you called it, your developmental need of when the kids go straight to Jen, you need to raise your head up. And I think, yeah, you need to start thinking of where those points are where you can actually take the slack. And I will hold my hand up and say, when you're really tired, it's hard to not want to say the point scoring thing. But yeah, you have to learn how to like give and take, and know that sometimes you're going to have to take more of the slack. Everything kind of balances itself out, I think, in the long run. But, yeah.
But I think that in terms of the, you talk about the sort of mental fitness. I mean, one of the things that I've always tried to do as well is, certainly probably now more so than ever actually, you know, if you've got a hard week at work, if you know that there's potentially negative experiences coming up for you, you've got to have some sort of positive treat, positive reward, positive experience that you've got set up as something to look forward to, so that it helps you get through the bad experiences, if you like, knowing that, you know, if I've got a load of work that I've got to do on a Thursday, but we're going to go on hopefully if there's not too much lockdown, like a family walk, or for me, I can go out on my bike for half an hour. If I know I've got that look forward to, it sort of makes doing the negative stuff a bit more easier to deal with, and I can cope with that. And mentally, it's like, yeah, okay, I can put up with that. If you've got nothing positive planned in during your week, and there's no sort of reward and there's no outlet, then I think, you know, in terms of your mental health, that is likely to suffer. Particularly at these sort of times as well. I mean, I haven't been out on my bike. I went on my turbo trainer, and it was like watching paint dry, and I hated it, because, you know, I like going out on my bike, and I think the realization probably was actually, it's not necessarily for me like going out on the bike I like being out on the roads. It's actually what I quite like is being out on the roads, away from the home, away from my family, away from conversations, away from any media, and it's just you've got that little bit of that chunk of time in the day where your thoughts are your own, and you haven't got to listen to anything. There's no incoming new information that you need to deal with. And it's a bit of a reset button for me on those times when I can just go out, similar to walking the dog in the morning, actually. Getting up at 6:30, going over the local golf course, which is sort of shut down, so there's not many people over there. And it's just you're walking around, it's quiet, and you can think about how your day is gonna, I don't know, progress, if you like. If there is any sort of negative type experiences that might well be coming up, or obstacles, how you're potentially going to handle those. So you've got a bit of a game plan, so that when things do come up, they're not coming up as big surprises, that you're able to deal with them and roll with the punches, if you like, because it's a lot easier then for you to cope with situations if you've got a bit of a plan. I mean, it doesn't need to be for the OCD posse. It doesn't need to be planned to within an inch of its life, but you've got a bit of an idea of what your day is going to be like. And so those chunks of time for me are rewarding. Gets you back into your own headspace a little bit, so that you're probably more mentally fit to then help around the home, be a better husband, be a better son, if you like, be a better dad, all of those things. And the times when I don't have access to going and doing sport, I know I'm like a bear with a sore head in the home, and I'm no use to anyone, and I know that I get like that. So Jen will sort of say, you need to go out and do something, because it's starting to have an effect on you, me, and the kids as well. As soon as they go and do that, release a few endorphins, all's good in the world again, and we move forward.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I think for mental fitness, a big part is planning for joy. And I think a lot of people you can't just expect the joy to happen. You literally have to sit down and think, what's really going to make me happy now? And look at your timetable. Okay, I've got this really challenging thing. You need to celebrate afterwards, or you need to have some sort of outlet. And same as you, if I think IJ calls it, I go a bit stare crazy if I don't get fresh air, almost like a dog being taken out for a walk. So she kind of monitors me, where if I start to get to that breaking point limit, she'll just say, okay, go for a run, or go for a walk, or go and do some yoga. But I need to have that fresh air, that outlet. And I think it's more important now, that planning for joy, because you need to be monitoring when is it that you need your own me time to recalibrate your own headspace in these conditions. So.
Yeah, I think it's also as well. I mean, the changing dynamic in people's lives and the normal activities that you would do.
Yeah,
they're going to be very different. And I suppose particularly for your extrovert type people, your social people who are, they get their reward from social interactions, that you're not going to be seeing your friends. So if that chunk of your life has just gone, it's how are you going to re-establish contact with your friends? And, there's lots of platforms that are out there now that, we've used, that mean that you can speak to people. I mean, some of the apps that are available now, I've probably spoken to more people over the course of the COVID outbreak than I have done normally on the phone, just because more people are open to it. I think in terms of how open you are to new experiences, Jen will probably describe me as, I'm pretty stuck in my ways. I like my routines. I don't like much change. And using IJ's birthday as an example, I'm not normally a big fan of going on to sort of FaceTime things, as I'd sooner be talking actually face to face to someone. So the thought of having some sort of party thing for IJ and dancing around, it's like I said to Jen originally, it was like, nah, it's like I'm not really fussed by this. This isn't my cup of tea. And then with a bit of guidance and a bit of reflection, it's just like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen here? I don't know many of the other people that are on there. If I'm dancing around like a loon, what's the worst that's going to happen? Nothing. Will I get a bit of joy from it? Actually, the 2 hours that we were just 2 hours that we were just dancing around in the lounge. And I mean, no, normally I'm probably pretty introverted, dancing around in the lounge, having a bit of a drink. We got our own music on, which is why we're looking so uncoordinated, probably for the soundtrack that you were playing.
I know within the first 5 minutes, I was like, what are they dancing to? Whatever they're dancing to, they're doing it well.
Yeah. So it's just like, it's changing your mental approach to things as well. And rather than just shutting off to new experiences, it's like, for me, I'd not done that before. And actually, at the end of that 2 hours, I said to Jennifer, I really enjoyed that. It was nice to do something that was more social. It was nice to do something that was, I suppose, a bit letting your hair down, so to speak. And I really enjoyed it. And then it sets things up and greases the wheels, if you like, for more experiences like that. So, after speaking to you, I've got works colleagues or ex-works colleagues that I'll be going on to a house party with and hooking up with them and checking in with them. And I think that's probably one of the, I suppose, key things now, isn't it, is that there will be people that you typically, before this, you might have spoken to every, 3 months, depending on what your relationship was like. Yeah. I think there's a lot more checking in with people. My parents I've checked in with more, friends that I've checked in with more, and the frequency of that goes up because you're not experiencing that one-to-one anymore. So it's interesting walking around the streets, actually, because other people will walk over the other side of the road. When they are doing that, they are clearly still looking for some sort of interaction. So that little cheeky wave hello, and that sort of thing, it still goes quite a long way. So you can still get your positivity in that way.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Having to be flexible, because this is where social media and technology has really helped, because beforehand, you wouldn't have been able to get in contact with these people. But apps like House Party, even WhatsApp. I had like a WhatsApp wine, happy hour, I'd call it, with people I hadn't really seen for the last 2 or 3 years, because we're all over the world. And now, after doing that, it literally felt like when we were all back working together in London, and we're now doing that every Friday. So it is really helping you to connect more with people that, to be fair, if you're honest, if you still had to go to work and doing all your other to-dos, you wouldn't have had the time to do. So
yeah, I think I suppose as much as it's the kind of like the solidarity and we're all in the same boat together. Yeah. And when you're talking to your friends, you get that. I mean, when we went out last night, and I think Jen's mentioned it to you before, the Thursday night, 8:00, going out and clapping and cheering and whistling for the NHS workers that are out there. And, you can be quite insular in terms of your relationship with your neighbours and the people that are in your community. I mean, we've lived on the street for probably about 18 years, and there's probably about 5 or 6 of the neighbours that we have really anything to do with, and the rest, their house is across the road, but you very rarely speak to them. And when you coming out last night, you've got lots of people that you never normally see, all coming out on your road together and just waving at them, or smiling, whistling, shouting, cheering. That sort of sense of community is probably, I don't know, greater than it perhaps has done before. And then you go back into your house and it's like, there's a lot of people in the same boat. It's also nice as well when we were doing that there was an ambulance that went past without the blue lights on, and people went sort of crazy, shouting, waving at them, and I suppose from their point of view, although I have no comprehension of how difficult their job possibly is, I suppose it's important that they at least recognise that the vast majority of the general public are recognising the phenomenal job that they are doing, and the gratitude that is there and that is being expressed during that 10 minutes of just pouring of, I suppose, emotions and gratitude towards them. It's I'm not going to go around to their house with a sort of £200 sort of donation, but I suppose at least you can sort of say to them, it's like, you're doing a great job, keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got that over here in the US, but I think all over Europe, everyone's doing that at 8:00. You come out and you clap and you cheer for all the heroes in the NHS. And they
Makes you wonder why we've never done it before, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, I think this is actually bringing up a lot of surprise of why we never connected. You've been talking about 18 years living on, on the same street, but you've never connected with some of the people on there. So there's a lot of things that are coming out now. You kind of start questioning, why didn't we used to do this before? Yeah. And I think a lot of people are going to come out of this with different perspective and different priorities. But
it makes you feel quite selfish how you've perhaps lived your life up until this point, and it's just kind of been, you in your own world and just your family, and actually there's a lot of other people out there, and it's I suppose trying to do as much as you can. I mean, we at school we had a food bank, and the year 9 students, who would be 14-year-olds, they had a massive bringing food into school for one of the local food banks, because we live in quite a deprived area, or certainly the area that the school is in anyway. And I think with the issues that currently are with COVID, we got notification that pretty much the food bank was empty. The school took down 2 tons worth of food, and the donations that we'd made from some of the sort of charity work that we'd done in school. 2 tons of food was gone by the end of the day, and the sort of the funds that were available. And again, it's recognising that when you're trying to get your online shop done, it's me worrying about, have I got food in the house? It's like I said to some of the kids in school, actually, because they was, have you done? I said, not being funny, I said, but I've got drinking water in my taps, which I very much doubt is going to be running out. So I can survive probably 3 weeks pretty much, without the sort of like the food, but I can only go 3 days without the water. So I think I'm probably going to be all right. And when you're looking in your kitchen cupboards, it's am I really that low on food? Or is that I haven't got a fully planned, here's my meat, here's my veg, here's my carbohydrate. Oh no, I haven't got the right sauces and condiments to put on. It's like, it's really, I think you can probably stick a meal together. We're in a very, very fortunate position. And hopefully people will stop doing the crazy bulk buying, so that pasta becomes available and toilet paper becomes available.
Don't get me started on the toilet paper. That just was crazy. But I mean, I suppose it's going back to what you said about your parents, where trying to tell your parents of what is necessity. And it's sometimes you open the fridge and you think, we don't have this, we don't have that. But actually, when you open the cupboards and you go deep into the freezer, you still have a lot of food. So, and the food bank one, because I went for a run the other day and there's a school just down the road, and I saw, they had that, people driving in to come and collect food. And the queues of cars was ridiculous. And it made me just realize that a lot of those parents, the kids, they were getting their food from the schools. So it does make you start to realize people are in really, desperate situations. But again, I'm surprised at seeing there's a lot more giving now in the community. Like I noticed 2 people who lost their jobs in the UK, but they're now got these jobs with the NHS, driving to go and give, give supplies to people and taking medicine for the NHS. And I know those people are not going to be the same when we get back to normal, because the jobs they were doing were like, I think one was recruitment consultant, and I can't remember what the other one is. But having to do that is really, when you hear them talk now, it's like they just sound like different human beings. And that's probably, I think, a positive side that we're getting from this. A question I wanted to jump into, because I know I've just really enjoyed this conversation and you've shared a lot, but I really wanted to touch on the fact that you are, as a teacher in the UK, I don't know if they're doing this here in the US, but the essential workers, they have kids, right? So these kids, when the nurses and the doctors are going in, someone has to take care of them. And I know that your school is definitely one of that, where you have to go in and take care of these kids. Yeah. When we were having the conversation, it didn't even dawn on me the risk that this brings. Because as we're talking about it, Jen kind of stopped the conversation and said she didn't want to carry on because the girls were still in the room. And it just made me realize the risk that you face in when you have to go in. Because I had my sister-in-law who's a nurse, and one of the things that makes her feel protected is that she has all this protective equipment that she puts on. But you go to school, you don't have that protective equipment. And I know, I mean, even for me, where I go to the shop to do our shopping, because the online shop where you buy and get it delivered, the capacity, they're just basically got so many people calling them up.
Mm.
It takes you
Yeah.
2 weeks to get your stuff. But IJ kind of highlights to me the risk of going into the supermarket, where you have to make sure that you take all these precautions, and you're having to do this going in to look after these kids who are definitely exposed as essential worker kids. So I kind of wanted to touch on, how do you prepare yourself from a mental fitness point of view to do this, basically?
I suppose as much as anything, it's about controlling the things that you are capable of controlling. And in terms of going into that sort of school environment, which in fairness, I haven't had to do yet. So since school closed down, I haven't been rotated to go into school. Other colleagues of mine have. And although it's with a small number of students, before the shutdown of schools, you knew that you were potentially going into a sort of 900 strong student body, if you like, where there were likely going to be students that could be carrying COVID-19, and typically the younger generation don't necessarily show signs, so they are asymptomatic. And I suppose it's making sure that you can do as much as you can to control that environment which you're going into. We had conversations at home, so when Jen sort of found out that the expectation would be that I might well still be expected to go back into school, she was just sort of saying, well, I'm not 100% sure that I want you coming back into our house. Any old excuse, eh? But in terms of if you've had access to particularly frontline care workers who are more likely to be accessing COVID-19, and then me being around them, should I be coming back into the home? So we already sort of talked about, when we come through the front door, it's like going into the operation in my scrubs, walking through the front door with my hands up, sort of thing, straight in, washing them, all the clothes, because the virus can obviously last on clothes for a length of time, straight into the washing machine. I would need to go upstairs and get showered down, clean clothes on, which probably should be a good habit anyway. And then in school, it's interesting, all the talk on social distancing. And before the schools were shut down, we were probably doing the social distancing beforehand, just I suppose down to the advice of some of Jen's works colleagues. It was interesting, is sort of people will talk about it a lot and then don't necessarily practice what they preach. So we've had sort of staff meetings in the lead up to school being closed, where we've talked about social distancing. And how is that message delivered? That message is delivered in a group format, where people are sat shoulder to shoulder with each other, so clearly aren't social distancing. And yet you would have a few people, myself included, who would stand off to the side or would sit apart from people. And then sort of for me going back into school, it's making sure that I've got that sort of that distance, if you like. So if I'm talking to students, and Jen's mentioned it already, you're telling me that if a kid sticks their hand up, you wouldn't instinctively go over to them and crouch down by the side of them to have that sort of dialogue with them. And that's a change of habit. So, when I go back in, it would be making sure that my delivery is going to have to change. I can't be having that sort of one-to-one feedback with a student. I would need to be keeping my distance, almost kind of like a lecture distance, going back to our university days. You stay behind that delivery point and you speak to the students. I'd also be wanting to make sure that the students were a proper distance from each other, because whilst I, as the adult in the room, I can choose where I go. For students in lessons, part of a school format is students walk through the door and they sit where they're told to sit. Now, if I, as a member of staff, are sort of saying, right, you two need to sit together, I'm not allowing them their social distancing. So I need to ensure that the setup and the protocols and the organisation within the teaching room, they also adhere to the social distancing, so students are not close to each other. So that, I got rid of the sort of the little mini whiteboards and pens early doors. because you know, pass the whiteboards down, pass your exercises books down. It's like you can't do that anymore. So why even put those into the room? Why even have that as an activity? So I think it's changing the way that you deal with things in a classroom situation, making sure that I suppose the organisation, the structures that you've got in place, that you're happy with those. If I've not been happy with some of the things in school, I have spoken up, not as a whinging member of staff, but as in this is an issue for me. These are the reasons why it's an issue for me. But here are some possible solutions to that problem. Would you at least consider these so that we can move this forward, so that I am feeling, you know, comfortable in my environment in the classroom and around school as well. You know, daft things like you walk through fire doors. Fire doors are typically supposed to be closed, but if they're closed, I know that I've got to walk up to them. I've got to get them open somehow. I can't use magic to open the door. Yeah. So I know that I've got to handle them. So, you know, a lot more of the little sort of door stops in place so that the doors are held open. Now that well might, you know, contravene fire safety if the fire doors are held open, but I suppose if it means you haven't got 25 kids of care workers who haven't got to touch the same door handle, then that's probably a sacrifice that we're probably willing to make, type of thing. So in terms of mental approach, it's you know, I control the things that I can control. Yeah. The stuff that is out of my control, there's no point in me worrying about it because I can't do anything about it. Compartmentalization is a skill that I think I'm pretty good at, which isn't always great when you're in a relationship, as you will probably know. Yeah. But it does mean that I can put things onto the back burner and kind of access them when I want to. So if I want to, you know, if I was thinking that going into school was going to be a dangerous place all the time, there would be fear, there would be apprehension, but that's not really going to get me anywhere. And at the end of the day, there's an element of I need to be going into school to do my bit for kind of the country and to help keep the country going. And, you know, I've always educated other people's kids. It's not anything different. I'm just going in to educate the kids of doctors, nurses, other key workers that are doing a great job. And as I've said to, you know, other people in talking to them, I doubt very much that people in the military over the years are waking up every morning thinking, yeah, I'm really looking forward to potentially putting my life at risk, having people shoot at me. What they're actually doing is for the good of the country, and having that change in mentality that it's not selfish. It's not just about you. It's you're doing your bit for your community, your country, etc. And it's that kind of motivates me and allows me to go into a school hopefully fear-free, anxiety-free. And if there has been fear and anxiety, I've discussed it at home and would have tried to put as many things in place as possible so that not only am I at ease with that Jen's at ease and the kids are at ease with me going off to, well, it's not an unknown destination because they've all been in the school, so they know the environment I'm in. But again, if you're someone who's going in as a key worker, if your wife, husband, sons, daughters haven't been into that environment, they're dealing with the unknown. They don't know what that environment's like. Therefore, you need to reassure them about how you're going to be handling yourself, the environment that's there, you know, what has your workplace put in place to make sure you're going to be safe when you are going in there. So it's peace of mind for not just you, but for all the people that are connected to you as well.
I love that answer because it's true that I'm going to start off with the point you made about the military because they do this all the time, putting their life on the line. So I like the fact drawing your motivation from that. And I'm always a big proponent of just focus on what's in your control because the rest is just going to cause you fear and anxiety. And I do that as well, the compartmentalizing, which I'm sure my wife says is not good. But in some situations, the stuff that's not in your control, you know, if you don't have the answers, there's no point thinking about it because it's just going to, you know, destabilize you. But I do like the fact that what you focus on first is security, making sure you're secure first, and then you try to provide that service to the kids as much as you can, giving them stability while making sure that they're safe as well. So, yeah, really good points that you shared there. So I'm going to round it up with the last question, Dave. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights on this. The last question I always finish off with is, what's one thing you'd like to share with the world now?
I suppose as much as anything, the recognition, if you like, that there will be many people out there that are in a worse situation than you are. So, dwell on the positivity that you've got going on in your life. Make the most of the loved ones and the family and the friends that you've got around you. Focus on the positive, and if the negative does come in there, allow it some airspace, but don't allow it to dominate your thoughts, because that will only have a negative effect on you and your interactions with other people. And do as much as you can to uplift the people that are around you as well, by doing as much as you can to help. Be the ear that listens and actually hears and understands where different people are coming from, because lots of people are in very different situations. And just make the most of life, because there's people out there that are really struggling at the moment.
Okay, I love that. Thank you so much, Dave, for sharing your insights with us, and hopefully we're going to catch up as a family over the Skype. All right. So please stay safe and stay healthy, Dave. Take care.
You too, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.